On Nightline, a dictator speaks. In a network exclusive, ABC's Barbara Walters travels to the Middle East to confront a leader blamed with killing thousands of his own people. With revolution in the air and the future of the entire region in the balance, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad faces American cameras for the first time since the crackdown began. In the streets, after months of media blackout, our team is allowed out in public among the people for a rare look at the culture of courage and fear under a watchful eye. And defiance and denial. Tonight, an extraordinary moment of accountability and hard questions. A special edition of Nightline, Syria, the Dictator Speaks, starts right now.
From the global resources of ABC News, with Terry Moran, Cynthia McFadden, and Bill Weir in New York City. This is Nightline, December 7th, 2011.
Good evening, I'm Bill Weir, and tonight we bring you a special edition of Nightline. In a major network exclusive, ABC's Barbara Walters is just back from another Arab country seemingly on the brink of overthrowing another dictator's regime, Syria. Barbara is the first American television journalist allowed access to the country since a 9-month-old revolution began. She was invited there to conduct an extraordinary interview with the embattled Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, accused of a brutal crackdown that has taken at least 4,000 lives. Barbara, welcome home.
Thank you.
You have sat with Saddam Hussein, Gaddafi, Mubarak. How does this man compare?
Very different. He's not a grim, strong man the way Mubarak was. He's not a wild, crazy person. At least that's the way Gaddafi seemed to us. He is calm. He is soft-spoken. He is articulate. He speaks very good English. There were no ground rules. He answered every question. But there is this disconnect, Bill, between what we hear about this country, the reports that we have seen, and what he says. And it's hard to put the two things together. It was the uprising captured by cell phone cameras and posted online for the world to see. Syrian protesters chanting for the removal of their president. The crackdown that resulted has been hard to ignore. Civilians gunned down on the street, the dead dragged away. The UN says 4,000 protesters have been killed, including more than 300 children. Enemies of the regime have taken up arms. And this man, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, once seen as a hope for change in a long repressive dictatorship, now has the attention of the world. Much of the world regards you as a dictator and a tyrant. What do you say to that?
What's important how the Syrian people look at you, not how you look at yourself. Anyone could have his own opinion, whether president or official or any citizen, the same for me, outside our border.
Public opinion doesn't matter.
Outside Syria?
Outside Syria.
No, it's Syrian issue.
Syria's uprising began in March, after fellow Arab nations, Tunisia and Egypt, had thrown out their dictators, and as the world moved against Libyan dictator Muammar Gaddafi. You have seen, I'm certain, the pictures of Egypt's former president Mubarak in jail, pictures of, in Libya, of Muammar Gaddafi killed. Are you afraid that you might be next?
No, I'm afraid that the people won't support me, Syrian people.
That they won't support you?
But I'll be happy with it. If they support me, I mean, the only thing that you could be afraid of as president, to lose the support of your people. That's the only thing that you should be afraid of.
Do you feel now that you still have the support of your people?
If you don't have the support of the people, you cannot be in this position. This is Syria. It's not easy. It's very difficult country to govern if you don't have the public support.
You feel the majority of the people in this country support you?
I said the majority are in the middle.
And
the majority are not against, to be precise.
Syria's Arab Spring began with a handful of teenagers writing anti-Assad graffiti on a school. Those children were taken away. Some reportedly were tortured. And people took to the streets, raging against the regime, and then came the crackdown. The crackdown in the beginning, the brutality, do you think it went too far?
I cannot tell you this without the evidence. You ask me to tell you according to rumors or to reports. It's not enough for me as president.
I've seen awful pictures of what happened. Why was there such a brutal crackdown?
What happened?
Well, I'll give you some examples. One example, the writer of a popular protest anthem calling for Assad to step down had his throat slit, and a well-known illustrator who mocked Assad also paid a heavy price. The cartoonist who is critical of you, I've seen his pictures, his hands were broken, he was beaten.
Many people criticized me. Did they kill all of them? Who killed who? Most of the people that are being killed are supporters of the government.
Did you give the order for the crackdown?
No, we give the order to implement the constitution and the law. We don't have policy, we don't have institution that kill people or give order for brutal reaction. This is individual, and that's what I described as individual mistakes.
Okay, done by the military or done by whom?
We don't know everything. But in some cases done by the police, in some cases done by civilians. Civilians who support the government, not by government, not by police.
But not by your command?
No. We don't have, no one's command. There was no command to kill or to be brutal.
People went from houses to houses. Children were arrested. I saw those pictures.
But to be frank with you, Barbara, I don't live here. How did you know all this? We have to be here to see. We don't see this. So it cannot depend on what you hear in the United States.
But I saw reporters who brought back pictures.
Yeah, but how did you verify those pictures? Yeah, so that's why we are talking about false allegations and distortion of reality.
Do you feel guilty?
I did my best to protect the people, so you cannot feel guilty when you do your best. You feel sorry for the life that has been lost, but you don't feel guilty when you don't kill people.
And this is Assad's main argument. His country, he says, is not on the brink of a civil war. The world has been duped by those violent videos, and that this is not a fight against peaceful protesters, but against armed opponents of the regime. That's what he says.
That's what he says. The U.S. State Department disagrees. After watching your interview, a spokesman said it's either disconnect, disregard, or he's crazy.
I vote for disconnect. He's not crazy.
When we come back, Barbara will take us around Damascus and confront the president further. We're back now to the special edition of Nightline. ABC's Barbara Walters, more of her exclusive interview with the Syrian president, Bashar al-Assad. It's so tough for us to get a real picture of what's happening on the street there. What was Damascus like for you?
Well, I was told, Bill, before I left here, not to leave my hotel room. And as a matter of fact, the Jordanian Airlines won't allow their pilots to stay overnight. So, I was a little concerned. The city is very calm, shops are open. I had a minder, a young woman with me all the time, but I could go anywhere. People are sitting, in malls, drinking coffee and so forth. And yet, 1 hour away, there's violence and people being killed. Again, there's this disconnect that's very hard to put together. We landed in the capital, Damascus, in the early morning and found this ancient city largely quiet. No overt signs of tension or even heightened security. As the stores opened, we found food stalls well-stocked and busy. Same with the old Damascus market. Only at the high-end stores and hotels is the punishment starting to hurt.
Sales dropped to zero right now.
Meanwhile, the protests rage on. Bashar al-Assad was never meant to be president. His father, Hafez al-Assad, had ruled his nation with an iron fist for 30 years and had groomed another son to lead. But after that son was killed in a car crash, the president summoned Bashar, then an eye doctor in London, told him, come back to Damascus. Do you sometimes wish that you were still an ophthalmologist?
No, you cannot look back to see yourself as a doctor. Now you have more important position.
And indeed he does. Just last month, an independent United Nations commission who interviewed more than 220 Syrians issued a report stating that the Syrian government committed, quote, crimes against humanity, torture, rape, and other forms of sexual violence against protesters, including children. Do you acknowledge what the UN said?
Very simply, I would say send us the documents and the concrete evidences that you have, and we'll see if that's true or not. You have a lot of allegations now.
Did the UN not send you these documents?
Nothing at all. They don't have even the names. Who are the rape people, or who are the tortured people? Who are they? We don't have any name. They didn't.
Mr. President, they have issued this report. They have accused you and your regime.
According to what?
Well, according to what they said, it's 220 people, witnesses, men, women, children, whom they interviewed and identified. And that's when they called it crimes against humanity.
As long as we don't see the documents and the evidences, we cannot say yes. That's normal. We cannot say just because the United Nations. Who said that the United Nations is a credible institution?
You do not think the United Nations is credible?
No.
No. You have an ambassador?
It has never been credible.
Really?
Never.
The outside world has punished Syria. The United States, European Union, and the Arab League have imposed sanctions targeting Syrian banking assets and limiting travel of top officials. And in the last few months, more and more people have taken up weapons to try to topple this regime. Many soldiers have defected and pledged to bring down Assad. Today, Syria is increasingly dangerous and increasingly alone. The Prime Minister of Turkey, who was your ally, has said, and I quote, "No regime can survive by killing or jailing." Jordan says you should step down. The Arab League, they have suspended you. You've lost all the support of your neighbors and friends. Does that matter to you?
Nobody can isolate Syria because of our positions. If they isolate Syria, Syria will collapse.
Name an issue that matters in this part of the world: Middle East peace, terrorism, Iraq, Iran, and you will find Syria holds a key role and responsibility. So what happens to this man is of vital importance. You said that if there is any outside attempt to bring you down, it would mean an earthquake. What do you mean by that?
No, I didn't say that. I said messing with Syria. Syria is the fault line in the Middle East. When you play with it, you'll have earthquake that is going to affect the whole region.
For months now, foreign reporters have not been allowed to enter the country to report on the protesters. Can outside foreign reporters come? They have not been allowed.
No, they were allowed, and you are here.
I am here, and I have a correspondent here, and I have a correspondent here.
And but you've been here for 2 days now. Did anyone tell you where to go, where not to go? Nobody. You are free to go wherever you want.
So we took President Assad at his word, and with his permission, we sent our correspondent, ABC's Alex Marquardt, to the city of Darbil, where the uprising first began.
What is next for this man?
Well, he says the country is stable. It isn't. He promises reforms, elections for parliament in 2 months, and he says in 2014, presidential elections with opposition parties, and that if they don't want him, he'll step down. Well, we'll see. In the meantime, it may be too little, too late.
Barbara Walters, our thanks to you. And thank you for watching ABC News. We hope you check in for Good Morning America. They'll be working while you rest. We're always online at abcnews.com. Jimmy Kimmel up next. Have a great night, America.